when a detective is interviewing a witness, typically they know the ways to recognize when the person's being honest and not. And one of the ways to tell is when their voice fluctuates dramatically. Usually that's right at the time of a lie. Another way to tell is they mumble or repeat themselves, trying to clarify, but in a way actually muddy the issue. So, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and play this next little piece and listen to Deedee here. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I need to get a little closer to the microphone here.
And then what happened?
And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. Next thing I hear, "Are you following me for?"
Okay, so let me make.
And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. Next thing I hear, "Are you following me for?"
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this. So, Trayvon tells you that.
And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. Next thing I hear.
Now, listening to that, she hit all the main points. She raised her voice dramatically at a point that shouldn't have been raised, and then she repeated herself and also mumbled so that it made it difficult to understand what she was saying. So all three of the things she hit there, and basically that point that she's making there is that George came upon Trayvon and not the other way around. We know, as that she's only 16. She's not thinking this stuff out for herself, and she probably doesn't have much reason to lie. I can't think of why she would be lying about it. I do believe that maybe she instigated it rather than telling him to run away. She was saying, chase that guy down and kick his, what? I'm not sure of that. That's just, you get these ideas in your head of what a 16-year-old girl would be saying to her boyfriend, in a case like this. What do you mean? What do you mean you're running from the guy? Go stomp his ass. Maybe. But then again, girls are a little more cautious. She may have been saying, run away, and I'm going to give her that. In the back of my mind, I've got the doubt, but, I'm going to give her that doubt and say, yeah, she was saying, run away. And I'm going to go ahead and say she's being honest in that part. And, throughout the tape, you can hear when she's just talking clearly and she's saying what happened. It's pretty straightforward. She's not lying. Or if she is, she's good. But when she does this stuff, this bouncing around thing, that's when, you got to wonder. Hold on, let's hear it again.
And then what happened?
And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. Next thing I hear, "Are you following me for?" And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. Next thing I hear. And then he told me that I was getting close. And he told me that I was getting real close to him. Next thing I hear, "Are you following me for?"
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this. So.
Yeah, so let's clarify it. The detective wants to clarify it or muddy the issue. Basically, what she's telling us is Trayvon came upon George and asked him, "What you following me for?" George had already said that he had lost him, and he walked around for over a minute talking to the the non-emergency dispatch, and it was very clear that he wasn't following him. So at some point, Trayvon came back because Trayvon was in the dark clothes. He disappeared. I mean, it wouldn't take much. Every single witness has told us how dark it was out there. George was in the light clothes, in the orange jacket. Trayvon was in the dark gray. It would have been totally invisible, especially with the hoodie on. Would have covered his face, would have covered his head. There would have been no light shining off of that hoodie. And the dark pants just would have been, the only thing he had on him that was light was the tennis shoes. And I believe they said they were white tennis shoes. So, you might have seen these shoes if you got a little glimpse of light from one of the side patios. I'm just trying to look at it from what I can imagine happened. So I'm picturing George trying to get a glimpse of this kid. Hey, I would have done the same thing. I would have got out of the car. I would have followed, at a distance. I want to see where he went, so I can tell the cops, hey, I saw him climb in a house. He went in the house down the street. He ran down there to the second building and went in the house on the right. That would be perfect. Then the cops could go down and question him, and he could explain that there was no issue, that he was just running because he didn't know who this guy was, and there would have been no problem. There's no reason for Trayvon to attack George for monitoring his movements. I was a 17-year-old. I had people monitor my movements. I had people out there watching me. My common response was, take a picture, it lasts longer. We weren't the nicest kids, sure. That was a kind of rude thing to say to a little old man that's trying to keep an eye on the neighborhood. Nothing wrong with that. All right, let's continue.
Trayvon tells you the guy's getting closer to him.
Yeah.
And then you hear Trayvon saying something.
Yeah.
And what do you hear Trayvon saying?
Why you following me for?
Why are you following me for?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
I hear this man, like an old man.
Okay.
Say, what are you doing around here?
Okay. So you definitely could tell another voice that was not Trayvon.
Yeah.
And you heard this other voice say,
man.
Okay.
Say, what are you doing around here?
Okay.
Man.
Okay.
Say, what are you doing around here? Man.
Okay.
Say,
and what happened?
I hear this man, like an old man.
Okay.
Say, what are you doing around here?
Okay. So you definitely.
So she heard this man, old man, say, what you doing around here? Yeah. Was there something wrong with that? I mean, immediately that should have, if I were Trayvon or anybody else, is when I was a kid and I lived in an area where they were monitoring, and the guy said to me, what are you doing around here? Oh, I know what, you need to be punched in the face for asking such a question. No. What are you doing around here? What's that mean? Does that mean I'm a threat to you? Does that mean that I'm a criminal and I'm about ready to rob you? No. It means that I'm a concerned citizen and I want to know what you're doing around here. If someone asked me, what am I doing? I would tell them I'm on my way home. And I would have showed them my Skittles and my iced tea and said, hey, I just went to the 7-Eleven. I'm on my way. My dad lives here. I'm visiting. I'm from Miami. It's probably why you don't recognize me. And I would have pulled down my hoodie and said, hey, check me out. My name's Trayvon. I live right down the street. You need anything? Give me a call. I'll come help you. I'm a good kid. I'm one of the good kids in the neighborhood. Lie. If Trayvon was a freaking criminal and he was breaking in all the houses, lie. Fake it. Make him think you're the good guy. Come on. What was he thinking? Why would you punch somebody in the face? That to me is a typical thug teenage mentality. It's my right to be here. You're stepping over your bounds by monitoring my movements. And the only reason that Trayvon would be concerned about somebody monitoring his movements is if those movements were doing something that he was ashamed of or he didn't want to be monitored. But that's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter if Trayvon was a criminal or not. That's not the point. We're in a murder case here. And the case is about whether George feared for his life or not. That's the only question we have before us. If George feared for his life, stand your ground exists, and according to our law, he's to go free. In fact, he should have never been arrested. That's stand your ground. If he didn't fear for his life, and when I say fear for his life, I mean reasonably fear for his life. And when we say reasonably, what we mean is if you put a reasonable man in that position, what will he do? So, I could take 100 different people in my neighborhood and put them on the concrete with a 6'2", 160-pound teenager, and I don't care what color he is, on top of that person, have that man's head on the concrete, and have that teenager lifting his head and smashing it on the concrete, punching him as hard as he can. And according to George, they were hard punches. So I know there are some videos around, if you want to check it out, where Trayvon is seen coaching some boys. They, like a fight club. It wasn't anything bad. I mean, they were coaching. They were helping each other. It was like an MMA fight thing. Nobody was. They weren't mad at each other. It was just like, let's fight, and then when you give up, you give up. So I'm not saying he did anything wrong in the fight club. He's a coach. But if you're coaching, hello, I think he's pretty good at MMA fighting. I watch MMA fighting, so, I respect the guys that do that. And I would say Trayvon was feeling his oats. Probably did pretty well in some fights in school. Watched some good MMA fights. But that's all my opinion, and it doesn't make any bit of difference in this case. I mean, what we're talking about here is, does a reasonable man put in George's position on the ground fear for his life? That's the only question we have. The rest of it is all secondary. The point of whether George got out of his truck and shouldn't have, secondary. Doesn't make a bit of difference under our law. In every case, the man has the right to defend himself. Now, that we have two sides of that coin. It can be perfect or not. If it's not perfect, that means George was committing a crime, and somebody put his life in danger, and he had to defend it. In that case, it's still self-defense. It's just not perfect. In this case, where George is walking away, Trayvon comes up behind him and punches him and says, you're going to die tonight, and smashes his head on the concrete. All those things, the punch in the nose, which can kill you, the bashing of the head on the concrete, which can kill you, the threat that you're going to die tonight is credible, and the fact that Trayvon was moving towards the gun, which became visible when George tried to worm himself off of the concrete. All of that, every bit of his testimony makes it really clear to see that it was absolute. He was not lying in those cases. Now, there is one thing where Mr. Crump brings up, and I would say it's definitely an inconsistency, but it's an inconsistency that's understandable in the circumstances. George had just killed a guy, had his head bashed on the concrete, had his nose broke. The very next day, they were asking him how it happened, and he he knows they recorded the call. So he's on the call, he's talking to these guys, and he tells them all this stuff. So the next day, when they're asking him questions, he's supposed to remember all that. So, in a few cases, he misspoke on what he had said, but that's how he had remembered it. So you really have a hard time holding him responsible for that under these circumstances with that much stress. And it wasn't like by saying it one way or the other he was protecting himself. There was one case, one piece that Mr. Crump brought up that is indeed a piece of evidence that would show that that George was, had either mixed it up seriously or was just trying to cover himself a little bit. Here's where it is. He says that he got out of the truck to get an address. But in the recording, when he's talking to the police as he's talking to the dispatch as he's running through the complex, they ask, the dispatch says, "Are you following him?" And he says, "Yes." So, there we know he was either running or walking real fast. Either that or the wind was blowing real hard. So we know that he was, in fact, following him, and at least in the direction that he thought he went. So, when George went and reenacted it for the police, he said that he went straight across the T and didn't turn and go down that long stretch of the T. He didn't turn there. He said he went straight across to get an address. Well, when you're in the police car and you're watching this video, from the camera, and you see him pull up, he says he needs to get an address. Well, there's a house right there to the right. I'm assuming there's an address on that house. So, we hear George on the recording, and he says, he said he's running. You can hear the car door open, and you can hear George take off, and you hear the wind. Yeah, he's running. And then he's like, at this point he gets a little confused. And you can hear it. He's got, there's two pieces. You put them side by side, you can hear exactly the problem there. That he's saying that in the reenactment he's telling him that he's going to get an address, and in reality, and according to the dispatch call, he was trying to get an eyeball on where Trayvon went. And at some point when he's talking to the police about the he's in the reenactment, he does say that he gets out of the truck to see where he went. So, there's 2 points there. So, it's a little, but you got to remember George has, gone through quite a trauma, killed a man. And it's the first time in his life. Whether he's a killer and he wants to do it and he's looking forward to it and he can't wait to do it, it doesn't matter. The first time you kill somebody, you're going to be pretty shaken. And this is, immediately after. And we know that he passed the lie detector test. That was real important. It's a hard time getting around that. And, if you can pass that, that pretty much pushes you into another level. We don't use lie detectors in court, but it doesn't mean they're not reliable. We just don't use them. But usually the police use them, and that tells you something. Police use them because they're very reliable. We can weed out a lot of stuff if we have a lie detector test. And one thing we can do is not prove someone's innocent, but we can weed out a lot of people who are saying one thing but are lying. We can find that really pretty quickly. And I don't believe George was an expert at getting around that. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But none of that matters. Was George fearing for his life? He's laying on the ground. He's getting his head bashed in. Was he fearing for his life? Now, if you say that, well, he started it, let's just say that he grabbed Trayvon by the arm and tried to drag him to his truck. What's the worst case? Let's say that he grabbed him around his body and maybe a headlock. He's like, you're coming with me, boy. Okay, let's play the devil's advocate and say worst case scenario. That's the worst he could have done because he's got no bruises on his fists, and Trayvon has no bruises on his face or on his chest or anywhere. So let's say he did that. Then he would still have the self-defense. He would just be imperfect, which means, he was committing a crime when it happened. So he doesn't get the self-defense. He doesn't get the benefit of the stand your ground rule. That law gives you the protection, which means you don't get arrested. You don't even get detained. And the law is real clear. No detention. Immediately after the shooting, they detained George. They detained him. They arrested him, because anytime you detain somebody, especially in handcuffs, and take them to the police department, that's an arrest. They took him downtown, and they interviewed him and brought him back the next day and did the same. And they worked him over, and you can see all the videos. They're all clear. There he is, telling his side of the story. So, we've got Deedee over here. She's clearly lying, and this is what this is all about. I'm gonna cut loose because this is getting long.